So, welcome. So yes, where was I? So we're talking, yeah. Essentially, we're talking about today is Vipassana is seeing things as they really are, following the retreat that I recently came back from, and it's one of the key insights I had, and there was lots of stuff percolating to the surface for me personally. But one of the key instructions in the practice is to observe the breath as it is, not how you would like it to be. So it's very much, you'll know that with the practice that I do, the mindfulness practice, there's some sort of encouragement of a deepening and balancing of the breath to begin with as a sort of entryway into meditation. With the Vipassana technique, according to this teaching, you don't adjust the breath at all. You simply observe it as it is. And the idea is to train your mind to allow things to be as they are, and the basis being of it that we are all in some way subject to an unconscious sway from things that we like and we move towards, and things that we move away from, and that's quite a natural process in life. It seems quite straightforward and obvious. But where it becomes a little less helpful is when it's unconscious, and when it's leading us to actions, behaviors, impulses that come with other problems or create other problems. So, unwanted behaviors, really. And they talk in Buddhism about this, the resistance to what's happening now, the desire to have it either a certain way, like seeking pleasure, or a certain way avoiding pain, is what we call suffering. So if we're unaware of what's happening, then we can effectively live in suffering unconsciously, based on the what the Buddhists call the Dharma, which is the way. And this is, from my understanding, this is the way life is and the way life works. It's simply the deterministic nature of life. If you constantly chasing things that bring you short-term happiness, you're in a perpetual state of seeking. If you're constantly running away from discomfort, you might be avoiding that discomfort, but the actual experience of running away is uncomfortable itself. And sort of the Buddha came to the realization that we can be more at peace when we're able to sit with what's happening without judging it, and without having to change it. This is certainly something that we can all apply at some level in our lives. It doesn't have to be we sit and experience the most extreme suffering without doing anything about it. That's not what it means. But it really speaks to me in the way that what we're experiencing in any given moment is actually already happening. So what the mind does is it creates an alternative, it's effectively a different dimension of commentary about what's happening. It will say, this shouldn't be happening, I'm this kind of person, they're that kind of person, and we kind of can get lost in a shroud or a alternate dimension of thinking rather than experiencing what is happening. It's almost a subtle form of denial, and it's almost very egocentric in that we're seeing things in a particular way because of our particular set of conditions and circumstances that have led us to this point. So to say this moment should be how I think it should be is denying, like, every other aspect of reality except our version of it. It kind of seems a little bit obvious, but we might be doing that on a more subtle level. And that may lead to suffering. This is the theory behind it. So the practice of mindfulness essentially is non-judgment. It's observing things as they are. And in a meditation, we're asked to perhaps examine the breath, to observe the breath. And we will observe the breath, we'll observe it coming in, observe it coming out. And we might be okay with that. Okay, the breath is as it is. It's short, it's faster than I'd like it to be, but it is what it is. And we can get used to that. Then we might actually have some form of mental distraction that comes in. The content, whether it's a great distraction or an unhappy one, isn't as important as the fact that the mind has wandered into thinking. It's come away from the present moment, the direct experience of what's happening now, and it's almost like we don't know we're doing it. We're lost in thinking, we're lost in thoughts. And as soon as we become aware of that, as soon as we remember that we're focusing on the breath, there's a tendency for us to think that we've done it wrong, to go, I lost my mind there, I've become distracted, I'm not very good at this. But we're encouraged to treat that moment in the same way as we treat the breath, as it is, not how we would like it to be. And it really points to our intentions and expectations about what should happen in a meditation. Because a lot of us believe that our mind should be still during a meditation, otherwise we're doing it wrong. But that really isn't the case. What we're doing is observing. We're getting better at noticing what the mind is doing. Because when we're observing something, we're no longer completely immersed in the story of it. We know from our own experience, certainly in meditation, the difference between being lost in thinking, where we forgot that we're meditating, we're processing a conversation that we had earlier, we're lost in a fantasy about a holiday, or we're reliving something, or whatever it is. We don't know we're doing it. So we're unaware, we're unconscious, but we're experiencing that alternate reality. I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so it's about coming back as soon as possible, because we can't actually do anything about that. That has already happened. We come back, we start to notice the breath again. If my meditation starts with the intention that I will have a still mind, I am going to suffer every time the mind wanders away. There may be, and I've certainly had this myself, there may be times where we're present on the breath, we're noticing what's happening right now, we're not judging it, we're not expecting anything to be different, but we start to notice thinking just picking up in the background. It's starting to grab our attention. And in that way, at that moment, we can say, okay, no, I'm not going to follow that thought. I'm going to come back to the breath. So in some way, we do have some choice and there's some discipline around that focus. I'm not going to indulge in that thought. I'm going to stay present. I'm going to observe the breath, but I'm not going to judge myself for having almost got distracted. Then, before we know it, we're away with the fairies. We might be lost in some fantasy again. Again, it might be 5 seconds, it might be 5 minutes that we're gone for. I know in the retreat, I was gone for 15 minutes at a time thinking about situations and stuff, and really beating myself up for it, which was revealing, because it still showed me on a deeper level that that I believe A, I'm not very good at it, and B, I should be better, and I'm highlighting all those insecurities in myself. So I can really relate to what it's like to get lost in thinking, to be lost in it, and to really be aware that there isn't, in most cases, a choice. So the key is setting the intention to practice mindfulness in a way that we're observing what's happening. We're not judging, we're not expecting. And then when we're actually doing the practice, we're forgiving ourselves as quickly as possible when we become distracted. We have to remind ourselves that it's not about not being distracted. It's strengthening the ability to come back to the present moment. And that's really powerful, because in the most fundamental way, this moment, without our judgments about it, is always okay. So the art of mindfulness and meditation is bringing us back to what is okay. Now, we can argue that we'll be going through different experiences in life and having moments of difficulty. And that's really true. We're not here to deny that. But when we look really closely, we will see that those problems and situations, most of the time, start with thinking. They start with the commentary about what's happening. There's a very pure experience of this moment, this moment without the layers of thinking that we put over it. It's always fresh, it's always changing, and it's always okay. And it's always just gone again and gone again. And it's the mind, the filter, essentially, the lens that we're looking through life at, which is based on all of our past experiences, all of our conditioning, quite often the rubbish stuff that sticks in our mind. And we're looking through that lens. Most of the time, we're looking through the lens of conditioned thinking. It's given me a strange message. Yeah, we're looking through the lens of conditioned thinking and not even aware that we're doing it. So the idea really is to be able to train ourselves to come back to this moment, to take stock and to observe this moment as it is, not how we want it to be. Because the difference between how it is, life is traveling in this direction, for example, how we want it to be is going over there. We're going to suffer in this gap. We suffer the difference between what's happening and how we want it to be. So we have to, in some way, surrender our ideas of how things should be if we want to have peace in the present moment. It's not as straightforward as that, because quite a lot of the time we don't know we're doing it. So this is about bringing more awareness, more consciousness to the present moment, to training our minds effectively to be able to see what's happening now more clearly and with less bias. So it's the power of observation. It's the power to observe what's happening. And I kind of touched on this earlier. I must have got distracted. The difference between being in an emotional experience, or in a difficult thinking pattern, and being aware of it is massive. All of a sudden, what we're sort of surrounded in mentally, emotionally, is all around us. We're looking through the world, looking at the world through the filter of this experience. As soon as we bring our awareness to the observation of it, it moves away from us slightly. We get a different perspective on it. It's like, okay, I'm observing myself going through this experience. And the I that is observing isn't contained in that suffering experience or that difficult experience. But the analogy I used in the email was, this isn't something we can understand intellectually. This is something we have to taste ourselves. And we do that by trusting the process of mindfulness, which has been handed down for years and years and years. So by doing so, by entering into a mindful state, we are opening ourselves up to the possibility of seeing things differently, without expectation that we should see them differently, and without judging ourselves if we're stuck in the same old patterns and feeling crappy and going through that tough stuff. So it's trusting the process. We can, I like this analogy, we can read and listen to all the wonderful things about a mango, but that's never going to replicate the taste of it. And we can only taste the mango in this moment. We can only taste and experience things on the level of direct experience in the present moment. Otherwise, it's stories, and they might be great, convincing, helpful stories, or they might be disastrous, catastrophic, horrible ones. Either way, to be able to identify it frees us from craving the good ones and avoiding the bad. I hope that makes sense. I didn't have a particular order in which I wanted to speak that today, but it's basically what I wanted to say. Let me see if there's anything from the email that I missed out. Yeah, a useful quote for this really is: a problem cannot be solved with the same level of thinking that created it. And that was Einstein. So if we're sitting there experiencing difficult thoughts in a meditation, we might then judge ourselves with more thoughts about why we shouldn't be doing that and how rubbish we are and how distracted we are, because we're using thoughts to analyze thoughts. The power of mindfulness is to step out of that game and to observe. Again, that's a very subtle and difficult to describe behavior, activity, but it's possible. We do it by noticing as much as we can about what's happening. I'm thinking, I'm feeling this in my body. I'm noticing this emotion. I'm aware that I'm noticing this emotion. It's not going to eradicate the emotion, but it gives us space, it gives us distance. And actually, space is what we're after. Space has a peacefulness to it, inner space. It's the same as inner peace. It's stillness. We know the feeling of being stressed, under pressure, and it's a feeling of being contracted and heavy and tight. So mindfulness is about filling that with a bit more space, a bit more light, a bit more ease. So that's enough talk. Let's taste the mango. Has anybody got any questions on what I've said? I'm happy to pause. So yeah, we'll begin the breath meditation now. Be about 20 minutes. Don't worry if you get distracted, just observe. A helpful thing to do before we practice is to find a comfortable position. One that is allowing us to remain comfortable and alert for 20 minutes. And it's okay to change positions if it becomes too uncomfortable. And it's always helpful to be aware that we're doing that. Aware of our need to move before we move. And to set an intention for our practice. To practice mindfulness. And to practice mindfulness for the benefit of ourselves, to bring peace, to bring more peace into our lives, which inevitably benefits those around us. If we're less reactive, that gives other people space. And connecting with your own personal motivation. Having a moment just to sit with that. And we'll begin with the bell. Allowing the sound of the bell to reach us and to guide us inwards. Noticing how the sound of the bell passes, leaving a blanket of silence behind it. Noticing that where there will be other sounds that come in to the practice, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful part of the practice to notice sounds, because they're always present, they're always here, and they arise and they fall away just as quickly. What we're left with in most cases is what the mind is saying about the sound, and that's where we suffer. So it's a beautiful practice to have a little bit of a noisy distraction every now and again, to practice that ability to let go of it, or to notice what the mind does. And we settle by bringing awareness to the breath. This is our portal into the meditation, into the present moment. Becoming aware of the sensations of the breath, whether that be on the nose or the throat, the chest, the belly or the back. Noticing the particular sensations with every part of the breath. How the in-breath is different to the out-breath. And we're aware of that. Even without the labels, there's a subtle difference in sensation between the in-breath and the out-breath. Maybe that the mind is particularly busy, still thinking about the day, analysing and judging. We may find that the mind has wandered into thinking already, and if it does, that's beautiful. We have a wonderful moment to practice mindfulness by returning our attention to the breath, coming back home to the felt sense of breathing, to the letting go of the inhale to exhale, and letting go of the exhale to inhale again. Always fresh. Always here, always now. Each breath and each moment a whole new creation, never been done before. And it may be helpful to deepen that breath slightly. Just to exaggerate it a little bit, just to help the mind to rest. Always staying in tune with the actual present, moment by moment changes in the sensations of the breath. Noticing how it feels to really let go of the exhale. Noticing how the whole body relaxes as we let go of the breath. Whether we notice that in the face, the shoulders, the chest, the belly. Noticing the body. Bringing awareness to the sensations of the body. The weight of the body on the chair. The feet resting on the floor. Effortlessly connected to the ground. So it requires no effort just to be here. And the invitation now to bring awareness to the most obvious sensations in the body. What might that be? Opening our awareness to feeling the body. The evidence. What evidence is there that we have a body? Maybe we can feel clothing on the skin. Contact of furniture. Maybe it's more obvious, maybe it's a discomfort or a pain that we wish we didn't have. Just observing that sensation, allowing it to be. It might be that can't feel anything, and that's okay as well. We just open to the possibility that we can't feel any sensations at the moment. Is there a way of noticing a more subtle sensation? Maybe a tingle, maybe the aliveness of the body. We often feel the body more easily when we get the mind out of the way. We stop searching and Enter a state of open receptivity, just not wanting this moment to be different, not wanting to observe a particular sensation, and just open to what is, what's arising. And is there a more subtle version of it? And noticing what the mind does when we practice, observing any distractions, any thoughts, not as a way to change them, just as a way to notice. So we don't leave the body, we remain aware of sensations, but we come back to the breath to begin the heart of this meditation practice. We're aware, of course, of the space and the sounds around us. We're aware of our body resting in this space. Now we're choosing to rest with the breath, observing the natural flow of breath. Receiving the sensations of the breath. And if we wander into thinking, if we get lost, don't make a fuss. It's only more thoughts if we start judging or blaming. It's just another thought. So we let go of that. Don't need to think to notice the breath. There's no thought involved in that at all. It's a direct experience. Don't even have to call it a breath, just that experience, this experience of the moment. And recognizing that it is something of a challenge. It doesn't come naturally to just stay here in the present moment. But over time, with practice, we get better at coming back. Noticing the difference between the reality of this moment the difference between that and the story about this moment. And the mind is a beautiful, beautiful tool. Helps us to understand each other and the world. But it's not required for this practice. The mind is always about something. There's something deeper than that here. This presence, this stillness. So we return our attention to the breath, receiving the next breath as though it's the first breath we've ever taken. And this experience is always moving, it's always changing. The breath in and out, the mind present and wandering, sounds rising and falling, sensations coming and going. And yet all of that arising in this awareness, this presence. The knowing. And just spending the last few moments just acknowledging that our time spent meditating in mindfulness is productive, even if we feel like it doesn't go the right way, even more so when it doesn't go the right way. And that this practice over time has the tendency to free us from difficulties, to help us to be less reactive, and how wonderful it is for other people when we are those things. Mindfulness doesn't just stop with us, it spreads. It's contagious. So if there's anyone in particular you would like to offer those good qualities to, perhaps bringing them to mind. And letting that image go, feeling the benefits within of practicing like that. Loving kindness. And then just allowing our attention to sink more deeply into this moment, aware of everything. The inner world, the outer world, sensations, space, and perhaps starting to move the body gently, maybe just the fingers and toes, feeling the sensations. And allowing the bell to signal the end of our meditation. So in our own time and own way, coming back to the group, perhaps opening the eyes,